live stream now.
Okay.
If you won't mind. Okay, amazing. It's almost, I just got like this little progress bar right now. It's just loading and loading.
Making sure I don't have anything open that suddenly starts to sounds.
Okay, amazing. Yeah. I don't think we can also share your screen too. Hi everyone. Okay, we are live streaming right now. Hi everyone. My name is Michael Dang, and I am the film liaison this year at the UBC Film Society for the year 2020 and 2021. And thank you everybody for coming out and watching this event, being interested in our event. And I would like to welcome, this is the 5th event of our Normal Select series, with the director and writer and documentarian, Elvira Lind. Say hi, Elvira.
Hello, everybody.
Yes, so before we
Thanks for
begin
having
the...
me.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry. Did I cut you off? What were you
No,
saying?
no.
Okay. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that, even though we are online in this time, that on UBC campus, we are gathered on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Musqueam peoples. And in Vancouver, we are gathered on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples. And so, yeah, now that, we've established that, um, yeah, Elvira graduated from the School of Media and Creative Arts in Cape Town in 2006, and she majored in documentary film. She has worked within that field since, directing and shooting documentaries for TV, cinema on 4 different continents. In 2020, she premiered her first fiction project, which was The Letter Room, and it was sold to Topic and was invited to various festivals, including Telluride, Hollyshorts, Tribeca, and her film BOBBI JENE premiered at Tribeca in 2017, where it won all the awards in its category, which is really cool. Yeah, including Best Feature, Best Editing, and Best Cinematography. Her first documentary was Songs for Alexis, which premiered in Toronto at Hot Docs. And her 8-part documentary TV series Twiz and Tuck was bought by Viceland and launched in 2017. Elvira now lives and works out of New York. And if you don't mind saying, is that where you are right now?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's get right into it. If you don't mind, I wouldn't mind because I know that the letter room just came out, and I'm very excited about that. I bought a Hollyshorts virtual pass, and I managed
Oh,
to catch it. I watched it twice.
oh,
Actually, I
amazing.
really liked it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I found that there was like, something within the 24 hours that I was allowed to, browse the
Yeah.
shorts. I got to watch it twice.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. Um, okay, but apart from that, would you mind if we I have some questions first. I have questions about Songs for Alexis. I have songs about BOBBI JENE. We can talk, if we don't mind, we can, the letter room stuff, even though we're so excited about that.
Mhm.
You don't mind if we would talk about, documentary stuff first, right?
We can do whatever
Yeah, we're
way.
going to go
Yeah.
through the whole career. It's
Okay.
very exciting. It's going to be a retrospective moment.
Okay.
Um, okay, so let's start at the beginning.
Okay.
So you're from Copenhagen.
True.
Yes. Yeah, you can correct me or
No,
like,
it's fine.
slam it down if I'm wrong.
Sure. Okay.
Okay, but you graduated from Cape Town in 2006, majoring in documentary film, which we talked about in the intro as mentioned. When
Yeah.
was the moment that you picked up a camera and discovered your love for film? And was documentary filmmaking a passion that you found in college, or was it earlier than that?
Um, it's a good question because I couldn't. There was a film school that I wanted to go to. I couldn't afford it, so I could only afford 1 year last year. So I had to kind of compensate by showing a bunch of stuff and prove that I didn't have to do the other years because I that was all I could scrape together. And I worked at the same time. I worked in like a cabaret bar at night, waitressing and like just like trying to get through. So it was a crazy, crazy, crazy time because there was a lot to there's a lot of work to be done when I got there. But I was so excited to study film, and I come from a family of no filmmakers. Everyone was like, "What are you gonna do?" They just was they were very worried. My parents were very concerned that I thought I was going to go and be a filmmaker, because they were like, but only like the percentage of people that actually make it in that industry is frighteningly low, and basically it's no one. Why would you do that? And but I was very stubborn, and so I applied to the school, and I didn't love school. I always kind of knew I wanted to do something creative, and I always wrote stories since I was since I could write, basically. So I always wanted to be a storyteller, and I took pictures. I had inherited an old analog camera from my grandfather, who was kind of the only one who really could see that I had something with that going on. That so he gave me an old Nikon camera that he had, and I was shooting film. And I lived in Cape Town for a bit, and was traveling around and sort of trying to find out what it is that I wanted to do. And I was a little lost. But then I found documentary filmmaking to be sort of, it just opened a new world to me. And the film school, luckily, they had an incredible teacher who'd spent some time in Copenhagen. So he kind of knew where I was from. And we have quite a lot of documentary film traditions there. Um, it's a very rich place of that kind of experimental documentary, sort of was kind of invented there. And there's just like a lot of genres that it's something that's I don't even know how you would explain it. If it's sort of, it's always been very integrated in the filmmaking in a different way, and it's not very set on like this like more old school way of like talking heads and interviews. They were always experimenting a lot with it. So I felt like I'd always been very inspired by what I had seen. But at that time they weren't as accessible. There's no Netflix. You couldn't really, it was like to get a documentary film, a full-length film. First of all, cinemas didn't really show it. I mean, it was so hard to get a documentary film in cinemas. It would happen so rarely. And you'd maybe rent it on a DVD or a VHS, like that's also hard. So it was difficult to get access. So that's when I discovered documentary film festivals. And, there was just like a whole world that sort of opened itself to me. And I immediately, I felt this, I landed in myself in a way. I was very, very inspired. And I just kind of, yeah, it went really quick suddenly, because I just kind of knew that.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So the cabaret bar, was that in Cape Town, or was that in, I'm sorry that that was the only thing
Yeah,
that
yeah,
I
no,
took from
it's
that. No, but I was just trying to, kind of
yeah.
hear the timeline in my brain. Was the cabaret bar in Cape Town, or was that
Yeah,
in
yeah, it was
Oh,
in Cape
okay.
Town. So I would go to school in the day, and like try and study for 2 years and like 1 year. And also there was an optional third year, but it was kind of, it was all very condensed. And then I worked at night there, because it was like the only place where you could really make good tips. It's very difficult as a student, and didn't really have anything. So it was like you have to make the rent. And so I worked and worked and worked. And it was really, I didn't sleep for a year, I think, but it was also very inspiring place to be. There was like, it was great. It was a mad place, but it was amazing. So I think it just kind of it fueled a lot of other creative energy, and just like being around all these amazing people. And I worked also with there was a woman there that worked there who was a psychologist, but they paid more tips there than what she was doing. It was just crazy, because it was, yeah. So that's how I kind of made it through, and made a lot of friends there. That also, a lot of film industry people would go. I actually ended up meeting a lot of people there that was coming from America, that was visiting Cape Town. That was like where everyone went. And it's one of those things. Sometimes you just, yeah,
Hmm.
gotta do what you gotta do. Work a
So,
lot.
oh yeah. Okay. So yeah, the people who I've encountered who are really interested in kind of, a career in film, are very kind of concerned about, whether they live in the right place in order to kind of get jobs in the industry. And you, as aforementioned, you work and you predominantly live out in New York now, and that's where you are right now. Both of your featured documentaries, BOBBI JENE and Songs for Alexis, feature New York quite prominently.
Yeah.
And, people are always interested in, kind of whether where they live is kind of the right place to, forge their careers. What inspired you to move to New York?
Mm. It was always it's like one of those places, New
It
York
really
City.
is, though. Yeah, it is.
It is, right? And in my 20s, I always wanted to go and live there and do things. But I had already done the thing where, you move to a place, and I'd already worked in cabaret bars. I'd done a lot of bartending, a lot of waitressing. I'd done a lot of crazy, weird jobs to just get by. And I didn't want to go to New York and just work in a restaurant and just like figure out. I knew what I wanted. I wanted to make documentary films. It was very, very difficult to get a film funded, um, especially when you come out of a film school that's not, you don't have any, it doesn't provide any connections in the country that you return to. And before I'd gone to Cape Town, I lived in London for a while and was studying random things and lived there. So I felt very disconnected to the film industry in Denmark when I returned. And so I did a lot of assisting work in the beginning, and that was helpful. And I worked with a director who had lived in New York. So we'd gone and I had helped him do some research on his work, and I just completely fell in love with the place. And I knew I wanted to go back, but I wanted to go back with a project. So um, it happened to kind of fit. I actually went to San Francisco first to try and meet a person for the film I wanted to make that ended up becoming Songs for Alexis. And and then on the way back, I went to New York where I knew someone that I had met someone through, and then they introduced me to Ryan, and then it just kind of, I immediately just was just suddenly making a movie. And then I stayed for a long time. And then now I'm here with 2 kids and
And
married.
then so now you're kind of like you're settled here now. Like, it's like
Yeah,
the firmly in the
it's true.
ground now, which
Yeah.
is, and actually thank you for bringing up Songs for Alexis, because my very next thing on the agenda is a whole category about Songs for Alexis.
There
We're
you
that
go. It's been a while since I
simpatico.
talked about that. Let's talk about it.
Okay, so yes, for everybody who's kind of watching at home, Songs for Alexis is the story of a singer-songwriter named Ryan Casada, who is a trans man, and he was 18 at the time when you guys
Yeah.
were shooting the
Yeah.
movie. And he was in a relationship with this girl named Alexis. They're no longer
Yeah.
together, right? Or I don't, or
No, no more. Yeah.
okay, but we still got the memories. We still watch it, and actually, there's a question about kind of time capsules and stuff later,
Okay.
but we'll get to that when we get to that.
Mm.
And when we see him, he has just gone through his transitional operations, and he's getting his career's kind of getting bigger. He's getting booked for like San Francisco Pride and these big gigs, and he and Alexis are infatuated with each other when we see them in the film, despite a lot of trials and tribulations. And we kind of talked about this in the last question a bit, but how did you get to know Ryan, Alexis, and Fran?
Yeah, so it was through someone, and I contacted Ryan and told him about the project that I wanted to make. I wanted to meet with um, a young human being who was going through a big change in their life, and I wanted it to um, be someone that was also in strong family relation. And there was like a lot of things that I was looking for, but it could be anything. You go into the world looking for something when you make a documentary, and especially the way I make them, which is very verite, and I'm just sort of having to wait for things to happen and trust in the natural course of things. And you also just got to be open to what life brings. And it was a little bit different than what I had imagined. I imagined someone who was, yeah, a little more disconnected to the family, but Ryan was just such a wonderful person. And you film with someone you just kind of know. So I was just sort of trying to film different things. I filmed a bunch of different stuff, and as soon as I met with Ryan and his mom, the film started happening. It was just happening from the first moment. And there's an intuition thing that I work very much from a place. I'm like, it's like fine tuning weird thing. And I just kind of knew. So we
That's
just,
amazing. Yeah.
yeah.
Actually, I had a kind of a more general question about that, which is how do you when you're kind of fascinated by a person or a subject and you're kind of
Yeah,
like, this person would make a good documentary, how do you tell them, or how do you ask them basically, like,
yeah, it's
hi,
weird.
I want to follow you around and film your life? How does that work?
Yeah, no, it is weird. It is a little bit like asking one if they want to marry you or something, because it's like, or just for 3 years, it's a very committed law, and people don't always understand. So you also have to explain what it is that you're trying to ask of them. Um, but usually you already started working on it together. I don't really remember. I'm thinking about it because besides on the things that you mentioned, I've made other things and of different things, and also in more in Denmark within the same kind of nature, like Songs for Alexis and BOBBI JENE. So um, uh, I don't think anyone's ever said no. Sometimes this doesn't work out. Like I filmed stuff and it just kind of doesn't become anything. It just can't always live up to what it needs to be if you want to commit to that kind of thing. But sometimes things are just also a shorter film. Then it can't be a feature. And you got to just really keep feeling it out and like yeah.
Well, because the with both films, with Bobby Jean and Songs for Alexis,
Mhm.
there are these it's really interesting because these are real people's lives, but there's these kind of like big, kind of dramatic arcs and character developments. But unlike a fictional film in which you write, you can't really anticipate that, because that is people's lives, right? So do you ever kind of go into a film with like, this is just me talking from like a very university brain, I'm writing a lot of essays right now,
Uh,
do you ever go into a film with like a thesis, like, this is what I want to show of this person's
yeah,
life, but then always get surprised at how it ends up?
often. I mean, almost all the time. That's what happens because you just can't predict exactly what will happen. Or especially when I made the film about Bobby, I was with her for 3 years. So also, you can imagine that she will do certain things, but she also changes a whole bunch in those 3 years, and her the way that she makes her choices in life and the way that she responds to challenges and obstacles, and that also changes. So you can't, you have to just kind of
Go with the flow.
hold
And
on and just yeah, stay on that ride and just really all the things that are thrown at you are like gifts in one way or the other. If you're too committed or too set on like a specific idea that you want to do, you become your own obstacle. I find then you're looking for something that can be there's something won't really go the direction that would you think would be good for your story. Meanwhile, something else is happening that you're blinded to it because you're so busy trying to find what you think you need. So it's always about trying to find what you don't think you need or what you don't know that you need in these kinds of situations. But there's also always a lot of pressure because it's impossible almost to fund these movies because I'm not making films about famous people or people that are going into some kind of crucial scenario. It's not like they're not going into a war. We're not in like this very impossible scenario with incredible access. It's kind of like I want to make a film about this person that I believe is something very special. Like, but why? And all these questions that comes up. Yeah, it takes a long time to prove why my version of their life. Like, it's just that's very tough. So you're under a lot of pressure because you constantly have to prove that this is something that's worth watching, and you often film for a very long time without any budget and without any funding. So
yeah, so it sounds like it's a process that is kind of very intuitive in the way that
yeah,
it's like,
mhm.
you see something in somebody, and it's not really, it's like you said, it's kind of hard to get funding and that sort of thing, because a lot of the times with like the log lines, you have to sell people on like what film they're funding. But for you,
Yeah,
it's just
you
like,
change them every year or every 3 months. You have to make a new one, and you sell it to So you make one log line for the one place and another one for.
but it's very kind of like, if I kind of understood that right, was kind, it is very like, I see something in somebody, it is very kind of, you have the intuition. Sometimes it takes a while for people to catch up, but yeah, or I guess you'd say that, right? Okay, so going back to Songs for Alexis for a bit, what was your life like when you were making that movie? Were you living with that family, with Ryan and Fran, or were you kind of coming in? Were you like living somewhere else and filming them, and like going out to Long
I
Island to
didn't
film?
live there for that long because I filmed with them for about 9 months. So I would stay with them for a few days, and I would go home, and then I was staying in New York, and I would go. So I would go back to Denmark, edit a bit, and come back. Um, so I would stay with them for periods of time, but not. I didn't stay with them all the time. You can't, because then
Yeah.
you're making a film about your roommates. Different.
Yeah, that's actually that's yeah. Do you find yourself often working on kind of a bunch of different things at one time? Like usually when, of course, like things like script writing and that sort of thing, you can sometimes be, when you're writing screenplays, you're juggling a bunch of them at the same time and you have to, kind of follow the muse in that sort of way. But for kind of your documentary filmmaking, do you find that you kind of have three projects on the go at one time or something? And,
You almost always have at least three things that you're working on because they're all in different phases, and they definitely won't all come through and be realized. So, you know, you have to work on a lot of different things simultaneously, and yeah, because one of them will rest for a bit, then there's like funding, or you're waiting for something, and then what, you're not going to just sit around.
so you,
um
yeah, so you just like you have like scan discs somewhere filled with like, a lot of just kind of like footage that you're either saving or, you just have a
but you can also work on different things. So then sometimes you'll come in, you'll do a quicker project, you'll do something for maybe for TV that is more condensed and fast moving. A lot of people make commercial, and then you have those documentary projects that takes 5 years to finish, from start to finish. If you were only making that for 5 years, you would live on the street basically. Or it would be very hard
yeah.
to um, get by, because they don't really, you can hardly live off those movies. You can't live off those movies. You make them because you
Just because you
want
have the
to.
love and the passion for it,
Yeah, and
right?
then you make other jobs to make that. But it's 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 hard to anyone to fund something that takes you that long to make, like fully funded. You, of course, yeah, it doesn't become about that in the end. If you start to calculate what it, and you shouldn't, it's not about that. So, but yeah, so always working lots of different things and finding a way that works for you. Now it's also, working with fiction a little bit, it's easier to, then you can sit and write. And with two kids, it's hard to go and work in the field the same way I used to. So then that
Because
can be
these are
great.
oh, sorry, I cut you off, did I? Or
No,
no?
that's fine.
Oh yeah, because there is kind of like with both Bobby Jean and Songs for Alexis
Uh-huh.
and Twiz and Tuck, you are kind of traveling a lot with these people, and
Yeah,
you're going on
yeah,
these sort of these like long kind of excursions where you must only live off of like motel rooms and that sort of thing. So it's kind of it would be easier to kind of do a more kind of scheduled sort of fictional film.
yeah.
Um, Going back to Ryan for a second, I found that the film was this, this very enlightening and very important look at, the life of a trans man.
Mhm.
And there is some moments that I, found to be, of course, very harrowing. Like the experience with Alexis's father, or how they're like planning their road trip, but they have to
Yeah,
kind of, you know, what states are trans friendly, which was just it's as a
yeah, yeah,
cisgen, it's just really, it was really enlightening in that sort of way. And even to things like Ryan's relationship with facial hair, right? And how they, he kind of, wants to, have facial hair. And, you know, often in the film we see scars from his most recent, at the time, transitional operation. And because Ryan is and was very active as, you know, an activist for his community, the LGBTQ community plus community, that he calls his own, were the more kind of personal moments or experiences, did Ryan himself want to share those with the world? Like how much agency did he have on kind of like what was kind of shown in the final cut of the movie?
So I work and the only way I can work um and have a good relationship and like feel that there is this complete loyal and no hidden agendas and like this openness between me and the people that I work with in my documentaries is by promising them and wanting them to see the movie and have any right to take things out if they don't feel comfortable with it. And it's like we film anything and whatever they, they can, they don't need to think about what they don't want to have in the movie at the moment that it's being filmed, because it's only between me and them. A producer will watch it, my editor, very close people to the movie that they feel comfortable with. So we just film a lot, and then when we edit it together, we also show them things as we go, and they watch the movie, and then if there are things that they don't feel comfortable with or that they don't like, we talk about it and we take things out that they don't like. So people that usually, I find people that want to share their stories, who feel like this is an important thing for other people to learn about, or that they just have an openness that they want to share things, in a different way. I don't know. It's not even because actually a person like Bobby, super private person, doesn't share things online that are personal to her. And like, it was such a huge step for her to do this. Like, her art is her art, and it's a very straight line between being naked doing something or being at home talking about how she feels about her mom. And but it was like she explains it in a way I'm like, that's when I'm doing my art. So we kind of had this relationship where that worked. And it's never been a problem that people felt that I don't overstep their boundaries, or I make it very easy for them to say no, or draw a line, or um, and I have a very strong feeling of when to leave a room. I always want to leave before it's time to go, and making sure that I'm not that they don't wake up the next day and say, "Oh, I wish that hadn't been filmed." You can kind of always feel it, and then for the film, I need to get this. How can I get this in a way that feels respectful for the moment? And there were some moments in the film with Ryan where it was difficult, where especially when Alexis was upset, and it was hard to film her feeling sort of locked in between the family and Ryan, and sort of she felt pushed from all sides, and that was really difficult, and I just didn't want to, so you kind of have to thread with caution. But
So,
that's part of the challenge and my responsibility as a filmmaker, to really find those, or like understand people's boundaries. And
well, yeah, for sure. And there's often that sort of, you know, tension with documentary filmmaking, right? And, you know, I feel like you are kind of a filmmaker who shoots, you know, kind of people that you're close to, right? And people that, you know, who really trust you and you trust them, and you kind of, you know, in documentary filmmaking, there must be some sort of like, you know, um there must be some sort of balance about, you know, showing something that is, you know, truthful, whatever that means, but also, you know, being ethical to your subject at the same time too. So yeah, thank you for clarifying that up, that, you know, you kind of go in with yeah, your subjects, and, you know, they can cut parts out. I actually had a question about what do your crews look like when you are doing a documentary film? Is there like I kind of presumed that it was, you with the camera,
Mhm.
but the sound is pretty good too. Do you have like somebody with a mic in there as well, or is it?
Mhm. Yeah, no, it's just me. And sometimes I'll have an extra person, like for Twist and Talk, I had an extra camera person with me, and she would film stuff. Usually I do the sound on the one, and then the other one maybe have some directional mic on top. But yeah, it's a lot, and I also uh, like to shoot on prime lenses, so that's all manual. So, and if you're on, like running and trying to keep up with people, and you also have to make sure the sound's working. But it's just like the intimacy that I look for in the films are, it's just necessary for me to be able to do it on my own. I'm excited. It was really nice to work with a big crew on my film, the fiction film I did. So it's just so different. I mean, it wasn't a big crew; it was a small crew. For me, it was a huge crew. I was like, why do we need so many people? I didn't understand. And because I go to film sets a lot, and it's huge and enormous. Some of them are like you can't even. It's a small village basically, and you just. I was like, that's not the kind of films that not that I would ever get the opportunity to get work with that size crew. Or who knows? But it's like that's not. It was just not even what I would ever imagine. I really like the mobility of being very small little, but my producers were like, but you need more people, like you need this many. And we were, for me, an enormous amount, not that many, but it was fun. It's just so nice to be that many people, and everybody had their little teams. So it's like the camera departments, and it's like it was, because I was like, if I just have one extra set of hands in the camera department, that would be amazing. So, because in the beginning, I was like, I'll just shoot it myself. You can't. It's better to include more and get help. But on documentaries, you can't afford it. Not with the ones that I'm shooting. If you're doing an interview and you can kind of line it up, but it's just a different structure. So when you shoot these verite style, it's like you just gotta know your gear, and you just gotta be able to jump on the plane the next day and kind of go do it. That's sort of the vibe. If you have to rally up a whole team, it's the expenses. You'll never get it made.
For sure. I think that's a good segue into Bobby Jean, and that was the very first film I saw of yours.
Yeah.
And the film is this kind of very intimate look at this life of a very singular artist who is your friend, Bobby Jean
Mhm.
Smith. Um, and it really feels like there's, this sort of mutual trust between, yourself and Bobby. How did the idea of creating a documentary about Bobby come about, and where did you meet her?
She, so I didn't know her before. The first time I met her, I filmed something she was doing. She was working with my husband. They'd gone to school together, and she'd done, and I had just met him, so it was like, and I was shooting film out in it was like, it was like a fun summer. Like, yeah, I'll come shoot some stuff for your friend, and like we had a really good time, and then we just there was just something a story that she like what she was going through right then and there in her life was just like really interesting to me. And it just I didn't it didn't come to me right away, but we sort of kept in touch, and I kept brewing on this idea of this movie that I wanted to make. And then it had a lot of different, it looked very different, the first pitch that I kind of came back to them with, like, I think I would like to do something like this, to what it became. But um well, it ended up being me just asking her if I could just follow her around with a camera for a long time, and she was like, okay. And she was like, but if we do it, we go all the way, like then there's no boundaries. And I was like, sounds good to me. It's like, well, let's see what happens. And we didn't know, we were just trying. And because it was so small, it's also like it's difficult to get permission. I got to film places that were just like would have been super difficult if you'd been more than one person who was like, I could also double as her friend with a camera kind of thing, so it was a little bit like that.
I actually had a question about that now that you
Yeah.
bring that up, in terms of like, when I was watching the movie, a lot of it I was kind of like, wow, how did you get this? Because there's kind of this there's a scene toward the end where a lot of the film just for some background for, the people who are watching who don't know, a lot of the film is, and actually it's a lot like Songs for Alexis in this way, like long distance romances,
Yeah.
right? And Bobby is kind of trying to reconcile kind of her ambition and her career, as well as, this romance with her partner Orr, and Orr is also a dancer as well. And there's this one scene kind of toward the end where they go on a date in a restaurant, and you're just there with your camera. Do you like have to get permission in order to kind of go in and kind of shoot these
So I went
places?
in there, and this is the thing, I'm the cameraman, the sound guy, and I'm like, hey, so these two people really want to have dinner. I really want to film have this dinner. Do you mind? And I was like, the biggest problem was like the music. It's complete shit show to try and like find all these different little pieces and where is it from, and have to pay money, because you can't always recognize. It's just, so in reality TV they book the whole restaurant and they put a few extras in or whatever. I'm assuming, because I mean it's like always the restaurants are almost always empty, and then they shoot like it's a fiction film, and I just can't do that. So no, yeah, I just kind of went, and I just got a long lens. I'm like, I'm gonna test it out, which worked well, I think, because I was a little bit further away, but it was difficult because I could only have her on a mic on this small camera that I had. But I had, for my birthday, I had been given a small camera that I could, and it was a huge help because it was easier to I would shoot on like a bigger thing. And it was just kind of very much like I'm shooting a movie. So if you were standing with that kind of camera, people come up to you, or with this little one, I could more like sneak it a little bit. So that was the plan. And I actually still shoot on that a lot. So
Oh,
it was a great.
amazing. Yeah, because I was wondering how much of the ratio, like what the ratio you would say between kind of like guerrillaing it or having to book a location beforehand. And like
Yeah.
then there would be like the having to know, like, okay, my subjects are going to be at this place at this time, right? So you would say that you kind of guerrilla it more than,
Always. I mean, there's certain things was like when Ryan would play a gig at like San Francisco Pride, or like bigger things where you need a badge and stuff. There's sometimes where you need to do it. And if with Bobby also there were certain places, but I'm very much in the her talk kind of, you ask permission, like don't ask permission, but ask forgiveness kind of, go, you just kind of have to go, because if you start asking, it can become such a problem. If you just shoot it, sometimes you just have to shoot thing like in an airport, you're not allowed, like you get a little bit, or you just kind of have to wing it, because otherwise you screwed. Really, and you can't, like, there's just, on those kinds of movies there's no budget for renting with Prison Talk. So we shot that, and that was way more produced, and
I had a question
then
about what the prison was actually. So you can elaborate on that too.
the
The
prison,
oh
the
oh
Prison
s-
Talk.
oh
No,
yeah,
so
Twiz and Talk. Sorry, no,
yeah, so that was
I
more
misheard.
of, it had more line producing in it, and it was TV, so it was different. But the first, we had shot most of it as a web series to begin with, and we sold it later to Vice, and then it became a TV show, and then they filmed an additional 2 episodes, which was filmed later and with a huge crew, and was like a completely different experience also for the guys that I knew and on actors, and they found it really difficult to kind of suddenly come in, and then there's like all these people and departments and producers and in like rented spaces or very prepped. Everything was very organized, but we would just kind of, we went on a road trip for 3 weeks and just shot things. And in Las Vegas, it's, you can't shoot at a casino, so we had producers organized that we were allowed to go in, and there was certain parts of that were organized, but we didn't have anyone with us, so we were kind of having to get people to sign. But I like it to keep it light, because it just creates a different energy. It's like people forget that we're also making a movie. Well, if there's all this other stuff going on, it's just endless. You can't.
Did you have much experience with kind of, go watching the movie. I didn't, I don't know that much about contemporary dance, so it was kind of enlightening
Yeah,
in that way. Did you have a lot of experience with contemporary? No.
not at all, not at all.
Mm,
So I remember also some of the critique from the film was like, well, you need to know a lot about contemporary dance to understand it, or and I was like, that's just bullshit because it's not a, and it's also not trying to teach anyone. It's like I didn't learn, like now I don't know anymore. It's like it's not about it. She could be doing anything really. But it's like how to express yourself through your art and how that feels and how it feels to create something. Where does it come from? Where's the inspiration? Like yeah, it's an interesting thing because if I were to make something that was going to teach everybody what a specific art form is, it would have obviously portrayed a lot different. So yeah, I think I think it was so lovely when people just kind of had an experience. I had friends, I was like, oh, I don't want to watch a movie about dance. They would, ugh, they couldn't imagine anything worse. And like my big friend who, loves to fiddle with his motorcycle and has like a big beard, and he was just like weeping and just like couldn't handle it. And it was just so wonderful to see like people react, and like there's a lot of big dudes that just were crying. I was like, it's just so lovely. Unexpectedly, they're like, "This is I don't even." And they were like, "I want to dance now too." And so that was kind of an interesting. uh, That made me very happy that kind of that it created something unexpected with
yeah.
people.
Yeah, because I didn't know like anything about contemporary dance beforehand,
Mhm.
but I really did feel like it was, this very human story. And I kind of, and I understood. There's this kind of one moment where Bobby's with her mom and they're picking up the sandbag,
Yeah,
and she's saying something along the lines of, I think her mom's like concerned about her because, the performance is very, exposing, and she's naked, and it's kind of it's uh I don't want to say this and sound, I don't want to, reduce this, this performance to anything, but she kind of um humps a sandbag, and
yeah.
okay, so I can say that, and that's not derogatory to say.
No, no, no.
Okay. Anyway, but then so her mom is kind of worried about Bobby because, sometimes exposing yourself in that sort of fashion is,
Yeah.
very taxing on the body.
Mhm.
But then she says something which I think kind of really speaks to what dance means to her, which is that she feels something to the effect of, kind of withholding or underexposing her emotions is sometimes harder for her. And you mentioned before how she's kind of a more private person, which I actually thought was kind of interesting, because when I was
Yeah.
watching the movie, she, sometimes just said like these really hilarious, funny things. And I was wondering if do you find that she was a subject that you could kind of just roll the camera and just let her talk, or was it a lot of kind of back and forth conversations that we didn't see? Because it really felt like your presence was there in the film, but at other times it felt like, you were kind of like a fly on the wall at sometimes.
Mhm.
So were there a lot of kind of these conversations between you and her that we didn't necessarily, hear your side of the conversation? Or did
No,
you just find that you could just kind of roll it and,
I mean it was such a long over such a long period of time. So there was yeah, a big variety of things and moments, and so sometimes there was periods where we would spend more time talking to each other than that we would filming. And then there was this long period where we would hardly talk, and we would film a lot of things where we didn't even talk. And she was going through something like we were sleeping next to each other on the floor in a new apartment, and she was just incredibly depressed. So I'm just there filming, and she doesn't feel like talking. It's not so like different phases had different energies and different versions of how communications would function and work, and that's just part of it, right? If you're following someone through all these ups and downs, you also use each other differently. And we became really good friends over that course of time. So that obviously also changed.
For sure.
Yeah.
So, during in the process of making the film, you kind of followed Bobby for like a very extended amount of time. How long did you follow her for?
I think about 3 years.
Because in
Yeah.
the start of the film, she says something to the effect of, "I'm turning 30," and
Yeah.
then at the end of the film, I think she says, "I'm 32 now." So then I
Yeah.
kind of, got the timeline there a bit.
Yeah.
After those 2 or 3 years, when did you feel that you had finished the story you wanted to tell, and why?
Oh, but that's such a difficult question because you could keep going, and even after we were editing, we were still filming it, so you stop and then it's like, but this, what about that part? So, and you constantly are checking in to see if something's happening where you would need to go in and make a different ending, or yeah, so it feels like it's a very long process.
Okay, great.
To end it is a long process.
Hmm, hmm.
Almost impossible. Yeah.
I can definitely see that for sure. If you have like,
Yeah.
such a grand amount of footage from such a long period of time,
Yeah.
editing would be
Totally.
hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting because watching the films close together, I found that Ryan and Bobby were kind of these kind of kindred spirits in a sort of way
Mm.
because they are these sort of artistic personalities in which kind of artistic success means to them. It's kind of different from the norm of what artistic success would be. There's this great part in BOBBI JENE where she's kind of talking to somebody off camera who was you, and she was saying something to the effect of, well, in contemporary dance there isn't the sort of markers in place
Yeah.
of success in the same way as like in music you get a number 1 single, or in movies you make like, I don't know, $300 million at the box office, or you win an Oscar or something like that. And I kind of got that vibe from Ryan too, because during the movie, I felt that he made music for LGBTQT audiences and he wanted to be an activist there. But we see him kind of busking on the streets in Times Square and kind of getting lost in the chaos. But it didn't really seem like he really minded that much because he kind of made art for his family. He made art for his girlfriend. He made art for his
Mm.
community.
Yeah.
Do you find that it's these sort of off the beaten path artists that you personally relate to? And is that what kind of draws you to kind of um, film their lives, or is that why you connect with them?
Yeah, maybe. It's a good point. Might be. Yeah, and I think it's always been a lot of those people in my life. So yeah, I feel very at ease.
And
But
oh yeah,
yeah.
oh
No,
yeah,
nothing.
oh sorry, I never want to cut you off. I
No,
just want
I'm
you to
glad you're
just keep.
not. I
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, great. um Yeah, another thing that's kind of both similar about these two documentary films is that, as I think I mentioned this earlier, they're about these long-term relationships and this kind of ambition and this kind of tension toward like, ambition versus, a personal life. Is that another kind of theme that you think you relate to or are very interested in? And also, do you often feel like the third wheel in a lot of people's dates?
I definitely feel like a lot of a third wheel all the time in on like just in general in all my work is just like, let's pretend I'm not here, which is tough. And also, I mean, it's incredible to be able to be like recording people's lives and their moments that they share. I mean, it's just so generous that I often can't even believe that I get to do what I do. And I feel so incredibly lucky. And ambition, that is maybe, yeah, I guess it is interesting. And it still is something that I'm very focused on, I think, in my creative work, that it's how to balance all these things now, also motherhood and career and all these things. So for sure, that's still something that occupies me, and it probably will for a long time. Um, how do other people do it. It's just, yeah, you learn from the ones around you, and you also try and tell some of your own stories to other people to a certain extent, sometimes without realizing, until later you're like, oh, hold on. But yeah, so that.
In what ways would you say that you tell your own story kind of through like, these two films, if you don't mind me asking?
No, but there's tons of little similarities and elements, even though it's stories that are completely different than my own. Um, and I think even people that write sci-fi or something supernatural, I mean, then you'll find that storylines are completely identical to something that they'd gone through, or it's like we just mirror ourselves in what we make, and even when we don't, we still, there's always elements of it. So surely it's part of it. And you happen to choose someone that's going through something that's very similar to you. I mean, is that coincidence, or are you looking for that without knowing, or what are you drawn to? So that's, yeah.
Okay, amazing. We're now on to the letter room kind of
Yeah,
section of the questions now.
yeah.
The letter room is, would you say this is your first turn to fictional filmmaking, or have you done some before?
I've worked in fiction before, but never written my own script, and it's definitely not in English, and directed it also, and kind of put it together. So yeah, no, this is like the first real project.
So what inspired you to write this short film, and what drew you to this story about a correctional officer? Where did you get this idea from?
So it's actually some separate things, actually. So it's this podcast I listened to about these men that were all dating the same woman, and they were just writing letters with her back and forth. And it was this, she was very poetic and really enriched their lives, and they were all very in love with her. And then they later found out it was actually a man, and that he was kind of skimming money from them. But they were
Oh,
all,
catfishing.
yeah, but they were all so sad to have lost those letters in their lives more than they were sort of hard. And one of them even said, I wish we could actually just keep writing letters, like something in that, down those lines. And he just, even though it was a lie, like what's more important? And it just inspired me for a really long time. And I think the prison system here or in America, it really frightens me. And um, I'm really opposed to the way that is being handled. And so I'm sort of a little bit obsessed with that, and the idea of like all these people that are sort of stuck together and all captured on either side of it. It's just all this loneliness that's going on, and we're creating more by locking people up for just unreal like amounts of time. It's just incredible that is going on every day. So many people are sitting there with life sentences. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So that it just kind of, I pulled those things together, and yeah. And then the character that kind of came out of it, that also was inspired by so many different things, and then having Oscar make it come to life in that way that he did, it was just really amazing. And I'm always very inspired by him. So it's just really fun to kind of, there's a lot of the jokes and little things that we both would find really funny, that not everybody even find funny in the movie. But imagining him doing that just kind of, it was a big motivator to kind of, even if it was just something that we would read and laugh at, that would also be fine. I was
I
very pregnant when we did this. I was like, we shot it and I was almost 8 months pregnant.
Wow,
Yeah, so I
amazing.
wrote it while I was pregnant, and we could produce, and then I shot, and then I literally went home and laid down on the sofa, and then had a baby not long after. So, and then we were doing the sound and everything and the edit while we did the edit like the week before I gave birth, and then sound, I was like nursing in the sound studio. So, it was that kind of, yeah.
Wow, amazing. I didn't know that, but wow, that's incredible. It's
Yeah.
incredible that you did that. I actually had a question about Oscar
Yeah.
because I have down here, I'm not sure, how, personal you want to get, but I said you and the lead actor of The Letter Room, Oscar Isaac, have a close relationship.
Yeah, we're
And
married, so it's gonna be
yes.
pretty close.
I would hope so. I
Yeah,
would hope that you guys would have a close
yeah,
relationship if you're
that's true.
married.
Good point.
And he is an actor who,
True.
he's one of my favorites. I
Aw.
didn't tell you this
I
beforehand
can
because,
believe
I
it.
didn't want to make you feel weird about this, but
Oh,
I saw him in Hamlet a couple years ago, and, I was planning on seeing him in Three Sisters before, kind of everything shut
yeah,
down.
that
And
happened, yeah.
he's, yeah, one of my favorites. Such incredible, presence and talent and range, and could really do anything.
Oh, thanks
Um,
for saying that.
yeah, what was the moment that you decided to cast him in the main role? Like when you were writing the script, was he
Yeah,
always the person you had in
yeah.
mind?
Even when it was like, and I wanted him to be kind of more heavy set, and he had just lost a lot of weight for this part. And I was like, damn it, because I wanted it to be, he needed to be a little more. So he tried to like, he tried to make him that way, because also he's like, he can always, he's like a chameleon. I mean, he can just be so many different people in like 1 week. It's incredible. And I always wanted him to be him, just because I knew he would understand that depth, and like the there's just something about this main character, and I just love him so much, which is he's like this, he doesn't exist but he does. And um and I just knew he would know exactly how to do that and make it funny and heartbreaking at the same time. And it was amazing to watch. It was so fun. It also made it feel like, oh, this is easy with it. Like, because yeah, in my opinion, like one of the world's absolute best actors of all time, like doing your lines, and then it's so great. But we had a lot of fun, and you would think that that would be really dangerous to shoot a movie while one of you are very pregnant and very hormonal, but somehow we made it.
It worked. Yeah.
It was
So
a big risk, but
so him shooting hoops at the end during the end credits, was that him as in character as Richard, or was that
yeah,
just
but it
Oscar
was
being
like
Oscar?
it was like we actually shot that in an active prison, which was really exciting to me, because I was very adamant that we would be on location in an active prison also. And I wish the whole thing could have been shot. I wanted to shoot with real inmates, that whole thing, because the documentary heart, completely impossible. And with the budget we had, like they wanted astronomical amounts for us to even be there for 5 minutes. But we shot one day in an active prison. It was complete chaos and awful because of the way that it was administered, not because of the people in the prison at all, but it was just very, very difficult. So many logistical nightmares. Um, and we'd had this like one space where we could shoot, and I was so in love with these hoops and this thing, and I wanted the box within the box. Like everyone is in all these boxes, and these two guys sitting in another box with a person in a box that's supposed to have his free time outside. Like it's just all of it just makes no sense to me. So I really wanted to show these people being sort of um, imprisoned in different ways, also inside. Um, and we had very little time there. So it's just like while they were changing something, I was like, "Go shoot some." He was just like, kind of did something funny, and it was like, take the shirt out of the paint, and it was just fun. It was really fun. And we, in the end, we was like threw it in there, and yeah, I don't know, I love it.
Yeah.
It was
I
fun.
loved it too. I thought it was just the funniest thing.
Yeah.
But kind of going back to, a more serious topic, kind of we talked about this a bit when you were talking about kind of what was your inspiration behind the screenplay. But one thing that really, kind of struck me about the film, especially because of, recent events like, the most recent Black Lives Matter protests,
Yeah.
and kind of earlier in June and July, that really shone a light on kind of the realities of police brutality,
Hmm.
and criminal justice, and police reform, and in the United States and even up in Canada. And a big kind of theme in the film is this the misuse of power by police and kind of correctional officers, because even though it's Richard's job to look through these letters, it is kind of um this huge kind of violation of privacy. And there's this one moment which I was I thought was really kind of emblematic of the film, where, you know, he gets so engrossed in these letters that he's, you know, ideally not supposed to read. And I think his supervisor at one point tells him he has to use gloves. And when he scans them, he has a glove on one hand, and then on the other hand, he's just, you know, kind of barehanded, right? And, you know, you know, at the climax of the film, it's almost, to my mind at least, it was kind of ambiguous of whether or not, you know, Richard was somebody who was kind of, I think he did really care about Rosita's well-being, but at the same time, you know, I did feel like, since he was spending so much time kind of looking through his letters, he kind of, it maybe was for like a more kind of personal reason to kind of, you know, close up that story there. So was it your intention when you wrote this film to kind of explore these sort of moral and ethical ambiguities?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
oh,
no,
yep.
very much so.
Hmm.
It it's also this like, what does a lie mean, and when are we doing something for someone else, because, or when are we doing something because we want to feel better about ourselves and in the belief that we're doing something good for someone, and when does it matter, when is the idea of this lying about letters in this particular instance, but that you'd have people um, um, you'd have someone lie about who. I'm trying not to reveal what things other
Oh,
people
okay.
are going to watch it,
We are
but it's
not
really
a
difficult.
spoiler free. I just want to say to everyone, if you need spoilers, if you don't like spoilers right now, you can, we can, or I don't know. Do you know?
Well, I just think it was more about it is this whole thing about being ethical, doing the right thing in the belief that you're helping someone, you lie to them, but it's like, are you both in on the lie? And I think when you take a place like a prison, it already, everything is so unethical, everything is so wrong that, you know, censoring people's letters is already so abstract and awful and absurd that that should even be the case. The people are having to beg to look in the system if letters are lost, being not being able to see your family, being just punished endlessly by having all these, like, your dignity taken away, all these things that makes you feel like a human are stripped from your life, right? So these letters become these like lifelines. And then if you go to someone and say, oh, I did see, here is a letter, you kind of pretend letters exist, or you, yeah, I mean, that's what they are all doing, right? So what is that? I just wanted us all to, I don't know what's right or wrong, but I wanted us also to ask that, because then if we don't know if it's right or wrong, it's probably because there's something wrong with that whole idea of putting people in there. So the hope was that in between the lines, we would just try and figure out with ourselves, what are these ethical questions, and maybe the ethical question is a bigger thing.
As who is that inmate? Not the one who's getting letters from Rosita, but the other one that Richard talks to often.
Yeah,
Well,
Jackson.
yeah, what is his name?
John Douglas Thompson.
Oh yes, John Douglas Thompson. Yeah, he is in the film, he is kind of on death row to be executed, but we never, at least I didn't pick up any sort of, it was very ambiguous why he was there. Like, if he's on
Yeah,
death row, he likely murdered somebody, but likely,
maybe he didn't,
maybe,
maybe
but we
people did
don't
it
know.
wrong, you know, we don't know. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
all I
could
knew
have
is that
been.
he just like loved books and just, you know, was waiting for a letter from his daughter. So it was, you know, it was, there was
I
the
worked a lot
ambiguity
with
of why he was
John
there.
about this guy, and it was interesting because it was just really wonderful to sort of work and figure out who is he and who is this person. And we both imagined that he'd been in there and for a very, very long time. And I think it's so important to understand this, what is this idea of like forgiveness of and doing something wrong and then changing, and who are you changing for if they're never going to let you out, if they're just going to kill you in the end? Like, you're doing it for you, but you're also doing it for the people that love you, but then you're cut off from them. And but this feeling of like having put someone in there when they're so young, and just see him become mature man that just there is no the desperation in him of like just to be connected one way or the other. And it just also because John is such a wonderful man, and he just kind of has this energy. You just want him to be free, you know. You just want him to get the fuck out of there and just not have to stand there and ask for letters. And it's just, I don't know, it for me, the whole system is quite heartbreaking. So yeah.
Yeah, and you really get that sense from, kind of the film that, that I got as a viewer. I felt very empathetic to, even the people that were working in the system, but the people
Hmm.
who were
Yeah.
imprisoned in the system. And I wasn't, really harboring resentment toward them, but kind of the more just the institutional. I was just
Institution.
like,
It
this
well,
is fucked.
yeah, it's the right word is institution, because it's like
Yeah.
institutionalizing people, adults, and just kind of, yeah, it's a longer, more political conversation, but yeah.
So you and Oscar just recently launched this joint production
Yeah.
company called Mad Gene Media.
Hmm.
It's described as this multimedia production company. I think you have podcasts, shorts, docs, fiction, and graphic novels
Hmm.
all in the works.
Yeah.
Yeah, please tell us a little bit about how this production company came about and why did you feel like, now is a good time to launch one?
Yeah. It's a good thing to end on, I guess.
Yeah, we have one more after this. I know I'm keeping you for a bit longer, but if you have to leave, then that's fine too. But yes.
We just had a lot of projects that we were working on, and it just seemed like a really good time to make a platform where we could kind of work on our things more independently and with producers, because we both create things, but it's still really wonderful to work with various producers. But this kind of have a place where we could house all these things we were doing, and the hope is that we'll be much bigger and we'll be able to produce all these people we have around us with wonderful things that they're also trying to find homes for. So there was just so much stuff being made that we just felt we were in the process of making so many things. It felt like that was the natural thing to do. So this little room was kind of one of the first things that we did. And then Oscar's working on a million things. And I've also, besides from his kids, there's also a lot of things that I'm, now that they can both walk and think, it makes it a little easier to be, yeah, go a little more full on with work. So that's really exciting.
Hmm. So yeah, I just to kind of wrap up this
Yeah,
interview, and this has been such a fun hour. I've loved talking to you so much,
likewise.
and with and I kind of had this last question. I kind of wanted to tie up kind of the threads we've brought up about documentary filmmaking, about this fictional film, and so Oscar's in the letter room. He's your husband. Um, also, Mike Hernandez is your brother-in-law, right? And he's in the
Yeah.
film as well.
Yes. We have a lot of friends are in the film.
Yeah, a lot of friends
Very
are in the
important.
film.
Yeah.
And, BOBBI JENE is your friend. And of
Yeah.
course, you did the whole documentary about her. It really feels like your films, even, the fictional ones, have this sort of, time capsule element. I thought about that a lot with Songs for Alexis, because even though Ryan and Alexis, they aren't together anymore, there is this sort of the kind of intense feelings and the pivotal moments in his and her life are just still there via this
Mhm.
this film. And so do you feel like filmmaking, well, obviously filmmaking is a big part of your life because that's your career and how you do it, but do you feel like filmmaking is how you remember people that are closest to you? Do you feel like filmmaking is almost like kind of diaristic for you in that sort of way, where you you couldn't live life without a camera and kind of capturing you know the people that you love?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So that was yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I guess that was a good thing to end on. Elvira, do you want
Yeah,
to
it was a
say?
very beautiful thing to
Oh,
say. Yeah.
oh, yeah. Oh, thanks. I wrote it myself.
Yes.
Elvira, is there anything else that you want to say to maybe a potential, like, young filmmaker out there before we, wrap up? Is there any like advice you want to give?
Um, oh, so many things. It depends on what. I think the um
Maybe female filmmaker, female
female filmmaker,
documentary. Yep, going into
female, male, doesn't really matter.
yeah,
Like
okay.
you just kind of you just go do it, you know? Like there's so much now we can because you can film on anything now. So it's like you have a good idea or you just use your intuition. So this is maybe even more to the men than the women because we already know how to use our intuition. We have very strong female intuition, but that's your best friend in these things. And if you want to make very intimate portraits with people, you got to really switch on that emotional intuition registering system and yeah, be listen to things that you weren't listening for. Look for things you didn't know you were looking for. All these kinds of things. But that's for that type of documentary filmmaking. But maybe in life too.
Yeah, that's a good thing to, kind of think about for life too. Yeah. Just follow that intuition, follow your path. If you know the
Yeah,
path, just go to the path.
exactly.
Anyway, so thank you so
Thanks
much,
so much. Thanks
Elvira.
for inviting me. It
And
was great.
yes, thank you for taking, your time out of your day to
You're
come and
welcome.
talk to us tonight. It was just a big pleasure. And thank you so much for taking your time and, talking with me for, a couple months and that sort of thing. And okay, so to everybody who's watching right now, thank you to everybody who watched this event. Please follow us at UBC Film Society on Instagram and Facebook. The Norm Select series and UBC Film Soc will be hosting a whole ton of very cool virtual events, such as interviews, panels, workshops, and that sort of thing until the end of the 2021 school year. I know the Norm Selects right now, we're going to be taking a break for December because, tests and final assignments and stuff. But I believe we have a workshop coming up. You kind of have to follow our socials in order to, get that details. And so, yes, thank you again, Elvira.
Thank you. Good
And
night. Bye.
night and be safe,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Wear a mask if you're out in public. There's still a global pandemic happening. And yeah, I will see everybody later.